Hey, welcome back, friends. Scott Fischer here, Options for Senior Living. And you have found us on the Don't Let Haboob Hit You in the Face podcast. We are excited to be back and visiting with you today. If you're listening to us the first time, or maybe you heard the title, you're like, what the heck is a haboob? Well, let me tell you, here in the Valley of the Sun and in the great Southwest Desert, we experience very dramatic summer storms many times. And these haboobs describe these sudden, oddly often violent dust storms that hit the Greater Valley. Last August, we were all leaving for work that morning. It was a nice day. It was pretty hot, as it is typically around here in August. And when we got home, or we were trying to make our way home in the afternoon, there was a 65-mile wide dust cloud smothering the city. It was a mile high, and behind it came unbelievable winds in certain parts of the valley. And then, of course, crazy rain. Our terrain is flat, so floods happen quickly. And it was a wild mess when trees go down and roofs are ripped off neighborhoods. And it was just bananas. You guys, Options for Senior Living, that's my company. I've owned it since 2003. We navigate the complexities of aging with families as they go through ins and outs of the lives, the changing lives of their loved ones. And so they are often caught off guard. Often they are in the season with an aging loved one. But the reality of it is still they get slammed with these storms of life. We're here to bring you a relationship and introduce you to colleagues and partners and professionals that have often seen this in other people that they work with. And we're here to offer you hope and insight and some guidance for these things that are coming. And so if you're a professional, you're in the right place. If you're the adult child of one of these aging individuals, you're in the right place too. So stay with us. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a buddy of mine, Josh Norris. How you doing, Josh?
Good, good. Glad to be here. Thanks, Scott.
Man, it's good to talk to you today. Josh is an equity partner with Arrive Financial Services. I think your offices are in Tempe. You live out here in the East Valley. Last year in Tempe, that haboob wiped out a bunch of buildings. It took trees down around you, didn't it?
Yes, actually, just south of here, one of my good friends who owns a law firm, like he had some trees ripped out of his yard, which is just a few miles away, and yeah, it was crazy. I remember that haboob actually, or one of them last year. I was at my son's soccer game, and
Mm-hmm.
we were looking. It was in the distance when we started the game, and I've lived in Arizona my entire life, so I've experienced these many times. I told my wife, I said, we're going to need to go to the car here in a minute. She's like, really? I'm like, yep. So 10 minutes rolls by. We start seeing that big wall that you're talking about. And the next thing we're walking to the car. We get in the car right at the right time, and you can't see anything more than about maybe a football field in front of you. But we were close enough to see the goalposts of the soccer field being blown by the wind, literally moving across the field. So it was pretty wild. And I will tell you, you'd mentioned roofers. I have some roofer friends, and it was a good day to be in the roofing business the next
It
week,
was a
or good
busy
month of
day
it.
for them. Yeah, my brother lives in Tempe, and he called me and he said, I was going to go take him out and go grab some beers or whatever. And he said, don't come over here. Like the tree is crushed down on top of the apartment complex, and one of the wings of the building was torn. I've also got a picture that I show people that's taken from the north side of Tempe Town Lake, looking back at the football stadium,
Yeah,
and the cloud was swallowing the football stadium and all those glass buildings on the lake. And you just go, holy crap. It's so,
yeah, intense.
yeah, mad. Well, you guys, this madness is what people feel. Even if they know they're in the season of it with a loved one, they get wiped out and taken off guard, or they didn't prepare, or they've been ignoring these different issues that have been going on in the lives of their loved one. And so I asked Josh to come talk a little bit about his perspective on all of these things and get some wisdom and insight. So hey, Josh, would you just maybe take it from the top and talk a little bit about the work you do and how your motive to help and work with families around their finances? Because that's a big, big part of what happens to people.
Yeah, I have been in this business, for several years now. Prior to that, though, I mean, I owned another company for 15 years, but I had some serious health problems myself, kind of creep up. And just to kind of set the table of why I do what I do, and I'll shorten the story, but At 40 years old, I was put in the hospital with congenital heart failure. Was told that medication wasn't going to get me where I needed to go. They were going to have to put a machine on me called the LVAD, and I would need a heart transplant, but I wasn't going to qualify for that. Fast forward 25 days into the hospital stay, I had this machine that was actually pumping my heart for me, ended up dying on September 11th of all days for 15 minutes, coded out. And then 3 days later, it happened again. And I had some doctors go to bat for me, and I ended up getting a heart transplant October 4th. And it puts perspective on things because I had just sold a company I'd had for 15 years. And I had some things in place, retirement, life insurance, I had some savings and whatnot. But I didn't have my estate plan in place. I didn't have all of those documents, and I had to get my power of attorney and my trust and all that stuff set up while I was in the hospital. Power of attorney was very important because I didn't know this, but your wife doesn't actually get to automatically make those decisions. A court has to appoint that person if there's not a power of attorney document signed and notarized. So that was kind of my experience, and why when I saw an opportunity to come work at Arrive with my previous background, I kind of dove in, feet first, got, all the licensing and everything necessary, just went into crazy study mode. I became a chartered financial consultant, and I love it because I get to help families avoid some of the things that I could have, and I see my family didn't, right?
Yeah.
About the older generation and being, proud and not wanting to ask for help. Well, my grandfather's 93 years old. He's still living in his home. He's had a couple of falls, as we were talking about before we went live here. And I just saw him at a wedding 3 weeks ago, and he looks good. But as you can imagine, at 93, there's some wear and tear, and he just doesn't want to move into an assisted facility yet, although it is probably best for him. And having an experience like that, watching one of my other grandfathers and grandma pass away within a year of each other, and they didn't have their trust in place. They had documents that weren't notarized, so the probate process had to come in. And I don't like seeing that kind of stuff. So what we do at Arrive is we try to be holistically, from tax strategy, because that's important, to wealth management and everything in between, right? Making sure you don't run out of income, making sure that as you need assisted living, that the funds are there or policies are in place to make sure that it's not going to drain your entire, net worth. And sometimes it does. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's just the case, right? As far as spend downs and those types of things. But we work with a lot of people that are, 40s to 60 that have parents that are in that realm, right? They're late 70s, 80s, probably who you work with more so. A lot of our conversations aren't directly with those people in the 70s and 80s. Although a couple days ago, we just had a 92-year-old. We finished up their estate plan. Her daughter's been her caretaker for the last 7 years, and she's in that process, that transition process. One of my good friends, Andy Brown, he's a realtor, and he kind of helps just with the transition of out of the home. Been doing it a while, and he bought the home. They're making some improvements just to sell, but she's going to end up in that process, right? And I saw how, the daughter, it's been wearing on her. Last 7 years, she's been taking care of her mother, and her brother who was not mentally sound, has been living in the home, and he just left after 6 years. And it's these are things that if there was a strategy in place 15 years ago and the right people would be in their lives, maybe it would be a little easier transition, right? And that's why people like you are amazing in the work you do, because it helps facilitate sometimes in chaotic states. And I'm sure you've been in many chaotic states. But sometimes you help pre-plan and all that. So at Arrive, we just try to help people where they're at. And that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. We hope to. My motto these days is, calls before the crisis. And over, oh my God, 20 plus 23 years, most of the people that we've worked with are are the adult kids. The seniors are resistant. They're proud. They don't want to ask for help until it's time. I think we're in the process right now. One of Stacy's uncles needs to move, and he's almost 91. And I was out to his house this week, and we're going to get him moved to a senior living. He could go in independently, but he wants better food. He wants more social opportunities. He does. He knows he's had 2 falls recently, so he knows he needs more people around him. He's still got his faculties and stuff. So he's like, I think I need to do this sooner than later. And that's great. But he's 90, he's almost 91. It's not like he arrived at this decision at 81.
Right.
He was fully engaged. You mentioned Danny Brown. Danny's a good friend of ours. We have
Oh,
worked
really?
with Danny for a number of years. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He's been
he's
a
one of my,
big part of our
I've known
world.
him forever, like 15 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've known him more than about the last 2, but he's helped us in those downsizing situations where paying for care was all tied up in the equity of the house.
Yeah.
And so Danny and his has programs to help unlock some of that equity early so we could get them out, get them in the right safe situation. And then of course, then, make it all square up when it comes time to at the time of closing when he sells the property. But man, I'd love to. I didn't know that you guys knew each other as well. We need to circle the wagons here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's
That's
funny.
awesome.
He started, it's about 2 years ago. He started really focusing on this and really identified a niche. He was more
Mhm.
first time home buyers, move up buyers. And he's a smart guy. Again, I've known him a long time. And,
Mhm.
he started to make an adjustment when he saw the market do some different things. And when he started really focusing on helping those people that are transitioning out of the home, and putting some unique programs in place. He's been able to help a lot of families, and
Yeah.
he's done well for it as well, too.
He's been super fantastic to work with. One of the early guests on the program, Josh, I had on was a friend of mine who happens to be a human resource manager for the state of Arizona, one of their departments under the Department of Agriculture. And Melissa had an employee who was having lots of issues with her dad over the course of a year, right? To the point where it was affecting her attendance and performance and productivity and all those things. And so Melissa said, you got to call Scott and get some help. So when she did, we were able to bring 5 or 6 resources to the table that dealt with all these moving parts of her dad's life, found the right senior living place, but also met Danny. So Danny could help get dad's house prepared and sold, got the program in place so that mom or the daughter had some funds to take care of what needed to be taken care of. And then she sells the house, and then she got to invest it wisely. So, there was all of that that goes into this that families need us, that
Yeah.
all of us working together to get their ultimate objectives met. I'm imagining, you hand somebody $300,000 or $400,000 after they sell a house, you'd have some ideas on how to position that, not just drop it in a savings account and
Yeah,
draw
absolutely.
out, the money
Yep.
every month.
Well, and that's just it. Like, so in some of those scenarios where we see those situations, not because necessarily somebody has lost their faculties or whatever, it's just they need some help. And there's some significant equity because I was just talking to one of my advisors here. He's also a loan officer. And I mean, the American dream was buy a home, and that whole generation did that. And then they tied up most of their net worth is in their home, which is fine. But the challenge again, it's not like you can go and punch through your drywall and grab cash, right? That's not how it works. Once you sell the home and you have that equity that now is real cash, well, what do you do with it? How do you make sure that we're structuring the tax portion of that correctly? How do we make sure, if it's over a certain amount, right, for a single or husband wife, how do we make sure that we're either a securing it into a market or maybe an annuity, and making sure the lifetime income is there on certain products to fill any gaps that they may need going into that facility. So
Yeah.
it's like mapping out a whole plan of, okay, well, now we have that equity, but we need to make sure you never run out of money. Like, that's
Yeah.
goal number one.
Yeah.
So that we put together that plan for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you got a lot of folks in your office that are in the 40 to 60-year-old slot.
Yeah.
So it's their kid, it's their parents that are dealing with, they're the kids. And I imagine there's a lot of opportunity to talk to them frankly about what are you experiencing with your families, and let's make sure we insulate your kids from having to address. So whether it's this is the time to research long-term care insurance or the right sort of funding solution that might be right for their family. That's really, I would guess, sort of the core of some of the work you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's all about analyzing the long-term strategy for retirement, what that looks like. And insurance is always going to be a big piece of your picture, even at a younger age, but all the way until you're in your 60s. So, I mean, long-term care is something that can be a gap for people because
Mm.
it's expensive. And you could tell me, I'm sure, the stats of how much some of these that are not uh, have the highest level of care all the way down to the most minimal care, but the range
Mhm.
is wide. So those policies are great to have. They can be really expensive though if you wait too long to try to get yourself in there to where it's cost prohibitive. So when somebody's in their 40s, generally it's like, okay, we have all the other things. We have life insurance. You got your retirement accounts. We know what we have in savings. We've gotten rid of the bad consumer debts. We know how much we owe on, the home and the cars and all that stuff. It's time to now look at bridging that gap after you get to that point where you're going to start needing some care, and just hedge your bet with a long-term care policy. So it's part of the conversation at some point in everybody's financial journey, or I shouldn't say everybody, but most people's financial journey. And if it's affordable that they can
Yeah.
put in there, man, they really can pay off dividends down the line if they have to end up in that type of care.
Imagine that when if we're talking to a family, whether it's the adult kid or the senior themselves, a fair question to ask is, hey, I guess everybody hopes that you go to sleep one night when your time is up, it's over, right? You don't get a diagnosis that takes you on a long,
Yeah,
jagged slope. Most people get the long, jagged slope. They don't get to go to sleep one time. Our medicine has kept some of those catastrophic strokes and things from happening, and or we can help people recover from the my father-in-law's perfect example. He had two big strokes 10 years ago, and 30 years ago would have killed him. And here he is 10 years later, still clunking along, but he's on a long slope down, in terms of
right.
his functionality. And so with that being in mind, how do we get folks to be open to the conversation that you need resources, you need to putting your head in the sand is going to leave you vulnerable to Haboob. How do we get people to talk about planning and about being educated on what resources to weave into their story?
Yeah, having the
It's a tough one, right?
conversation. Yeah, well, so my old mentor and business partner, previously, he always had a saying that I've kind of adopted, which is hope for the best, prepare for the worst, don't get your feelings hurt, right? And really all that means is always protect your downside, see, what you want to accomplish and try to do, the right things there. And then if things don't go right, don't take it personal, just, have a new plan. But the conversation around it is tough because ultimately you're talking about when you're not well or dead. And, life insurance is one of the things that's part of financial planning. Well, it's not the most riveting topic for people to talk about is, hey, how do I, because who benefits on life insurance? Everybody but you, right?
Everybody but you. Yeah,
you're,
exactly.
you're, you're dead. So you have to structure conversations, certainly with parents, in an environment to where they're going to be receptive, right? So
Yeah.
generally, when I'm having these types of conversations, I'm a third party. So people will bring someone like me in to help with those conversations, and I've
Yeah.
been part of those conversations where just that mother and daughter I just talked about. There was early conversations when we first started their estate planning and helping them facilitate that, where she wasn't exactly excited about moving somewhere else. And for whatever reason, she wanted to listen to my perspective on it. So I gave her my perspective. Obviously, I'm not, telling anybody what to do. And through that conversation, it got her to a point to where now, okay, let's do what we need to do. I think I do need the help and those types of things. So sometimes having a third party can really help facilitate those conversations. And that's going to be someone like yourself in placement, or someone that's a financial advisor. Somebody like that generally can be that ear that's already gained that you'll hear advice that maybe you don't want to hear from your son or daughter that's 25 years younger than you, that you raised and saw them all
Yeah.
make all the mistakes.
Yeah.
And well, what do they know? And then sometimes it's just, having the hard conversations. So we do estate planning workshops all over the valley. And one of our slides says, at the end of the day, the essence of estate planning is love, right? And I always thought it was corny, and it is. But I broke it down. One time I'm sitting there and I'm meditating on that. I'm like, okay, when I'm going over that, what do I mean by that? Well, the love is having the hard conversations, right?
Yes.
What do I want my care to look like if I'm incapacitated, right? That's kind of talking about the advanced health directive portion of it. Do I want to be on life support? Do I want to be an organ donor? Who do I want to be able to make those decisions in my proxy? Like it's a tough conversation to have, but it's so important to have. And when you're doing that and you're having those tough conversations, that's love for your family. It's not leaving them with a gigantic mess at the end.
Hallelujah. I'm so glad you said that. But Stacy's had another uncle. My wife Stacy had another uncle who was the youngest of the tribe. And so in
Mhm.
his early 70s, he was having some issues breathing and such. So he goes to the doctor, thinks he's got COPD, and he's got stage 4 metastasized lung cancer to his liver, to his brain, and he's got limited time to live. He lived up in Cottonwood, and so Stacy and I and her cousin went racing up there to help him. And when I said to Uncle Danny, "Hey, where's your powers of attorney?" He's like, "What's the point?" His daughter was his only heir. And like you said earlier, well, the doctor is not, that don't give the doctor permission to talk to her. That don't give the bank permission to give her his money or access, stuff if he gets sick and he can't make decisions or make his house payment or whatever. And so he didn't have any powers of attorney. He didn't have any estate planning, nothing, Josh. And as it turned out, he lived about 3.5 more weeks is all he lived. Um, his daughter, of course, and there was no contestment because her brother had passed away. Her mother had passed away. She is the sole heir, but the state still had to go through probate with all that for up to almost a year before it was all that estate was settled. So unnecessary. But if we can reach those adult kids to have those, we say have a hard conversation. I want to talk about that in a second, but if we can encourage them to have that, mom and dad, we need to talk about this. Get your head out of the sand. These are the things that can really happen
Yeah.
because it happened to us and we are in the business.
Right. And we see it all the time. I mentioned the workshops that we do all around the valley. So I always start out with, listen, you're here for a reason. Nobody just shows up at 10 a.m. in Chandler at a library to learn about estate planning if you didn't have something happen recently or witness something. And it's true. I would say a large percentage come because they just saw a relative go through probate or a friend of theirs did, and they've been thinking about it forever. And then they're like, okay, we need to get these things in place because the probate courts, they get a bad rap. And I like to tell people that it's not the enemy. It's a good thing that there is a process in place. But here's the deal.
That's right.
You're deciding what they think you want to happen. Well, when you go through the process of having those conversations, the power of attorney, advanced health directives, but setting up a trust and then beneficiaries of that, you're telling them exactly what you want. And a will,
Right.
people ask all the time, like, well, I have a will, isn't that good enough? So, well, a will is literally a document that's your wishes on paper for the probate court, right? That's all the will is, but it's good. It's better than having nothing. And they're going to take it into consideration, but it's still made public. People can still make a claim against the estate, whereas the trust does help separate that. So when having that conversation, because kids, that's often my, 50-year-olds usually like, yeah, my parents don't have this done. And I'm like, well, you should talk to them about it. And number one, they're usually getting it done with me. It's like, hey, I got ours done. We need to get yours. Let's review your document. Maybe it was done a long time ago. Maybe they don't have it in place, just so that you're not left with a mess. And that's how you can basically position it. It's like, hey, I want to make sure things are taken care of the way you want it taken care of, mom and dad, but we need to document it. Otherwise, it may not go the way you want. Uncle Ned
Yeah.
might end up with the inheritance, whatever. That's kind of the approach of, I want to make sure your wishes are taken care of. And when they approach
Yeah.
it from that standpoint, it does open up the conversation a little more receptive.
My mom passed last year, and one of the unintended consequences of her passing was that my brothers and I are totally at odds with each other over some things. And it has to do with mom not declaring her wishes. And some of it's financial because I'll just say she was reckless financially for years. So left a lot of financial burden for me and my brothers to manage or to handle or cover. So decisions had to be made after she passed, which she didn't provide for. And, you know, left us to make decisions about what were the priorities. And so because there's 4 brothers and 4 brothers have 4 different points of view,
Yeah.
right? You got 4 brothers not really talking to each other right now. And it's so the loving thing from mom towards her sons would have been to deal with some of this and not avoid it. We tried hard from our perspective to get mom to make some decisions. Of course, she didn't. So I just implore families, hear what Josh is saying. It is absolutely an act of love to get this stuff worked out, ironed out, because the unintended consequences are painful for sure.
Yep. Absolutely. And most people don't do it with any malintent. They do it because they're just, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have enough to warrant it, that kind of thing. And at the end of the day, it is all about love, and it's just about making sure that your family is your wishes are taken care of, right? Because
Yeah.
like you said, you have 3 brothers. Each one of them could say, if I asked, hey, what do you think your mom would have wanted? Each one of you are going to have something different, maybe a little
Yep.
different, maybe a lot different.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
she would have wanted this.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
just keeps that convoluted, murky, what did she want, down to a documented, this is the wish. And that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
hope for people that they do. Don't wait like I did. Dum Dum did
Yeah.
it in the hospital. But
Well, I want to come back to that just a little bit as we're kind of getting towards our time together here, because I think it's such an important. You started out and told everybody about the issues with your heart, and it kind of prompted, and now it's your new career comes from all that. But you want to touch just a little bit emotionally what it felt like to get that diagnosis or be told something that is that foundationally shaking.
yeah, absolutely. So I'll dive a little more into it. So a year prior to all this, I had been in the hospital for heart failure for the first time, and they knew it was viral then, but medication was able to get me out, and I was feeling great. I was setting records in the gym. Our family went cross country trip to Myrtle Beach. Spent 4 weeks, almost a month on that trip. It was fantastic. I had sold my company, and then it started to creep up again that next year, right after my golf. I have a golf league I've had for years. We were doing our annual Sedona golf championship, and I started getting that cough and all the symptoms. I'm thinking, it's got to be the elevation. Well, we get back down here, and for the next 2 weeks, my energy's gone. I got all the symptoms. I had been made the COO of the larger company that had bought us, and I'm taking all my meetings with the phone like this, laying in my bed. Nobody knew this, of course, but on speaker. And finally, a good friend of mine called me and said, hey, our wives talked, and you should go to the hospital. And I'm like, well, if I don't feel better by Wednesday, I'll go. And he said, well,
Mm.
listen, you might not have another Wednesday. He actually said it much more aggressively,
Wow.
but you need to get your butt to the hospital. I got it. And he's one of the few people who could tell me that. And so I ended up going, and fast forward to what I had already said. I thought it was going to be just like the last year, these medications, this virus is kind of coming back. And then I get the news that no, that's not going to be the case. And I'm really kind of now facing my mortality. The doctors didn't really. So at the time I had an ejection fraction, which is really what pumps your heart. That's how they measure the pumping of your heart. A normal person's between 50 and 65, right? That's a good ejection fraction. I was at a 12, and many people die sub 20. And that was where I started really thinking. And I'm a Christian. That's my faith. I have been since I was 19 years old, and thank goodness I have faith. I started thinking about, I'm 40. My wife is 2 years younger than me. We were married for 16 years at the time. My kids now are 16, 14, and 8, so they were younger. And I'm like, gosh, dang, I want another chance at this. So you have all
Yeah.
those. Then I was in pain for a lot of it. I mean, every time they would try to get me on some new medication, like there would be this 30 minutes. I honestly felt like hallucination, had to concentrate on my breathing. That was pretty terrible. I mean, I did ask the Lord to take me a couple times, and he didn't. He was like, I got more for you to do. But when going through that, and then getting to a point where a doctor named Dr. Brady went to bat. He called in. I don't know what kind of chips this guy called in, but the day they were going to present me for the machine that would then, for the next couple years, save me, at least that pump my heart until I could get on a transplant list, he had made a call. He said, I am going to go to bat for you to get a heart transplant. I'm literally listening to him say this after his doctors that morning said, we're scheduled for the LVAD next week. You're going to be presented tomorrow because it's a formality. Yeah, you're not going to get a heart transplant. You're going to get the LVAD. And when he told me that he was going to go to bat, he's like, yeah, I've made calls to people that I've been doing business with for 20 years. I mean, I was in tears. I'm like, I can't believe somebody would do that for me. Like, granted, we had rapport because he's a doctor. Then when I was told the next day that I got approved by 50 people to go on the list and then moved over to the next hospital, I'm like, okay, I have hope again. And then I was told that, hey, I'm 6'4", I'm a big guy, I'm O positive. It's like, you could be waiting for a while. It's basically what they were telling me. I'm like, oh gosh. So then the waiting game comes in, and then finally I get that call. And it so happened I have met the family, but it was a young man named Abraham who died in a boxing accident. And I ended up, receiving his heart. And I would come to find that out much later. They don't tell you who you're receiving. So I got a letter from the mother. Then I was now in the recovery portion of it. And I knew that I was getting a new chance. It put a perspective that was different. I'm not saying that I wasn't intentional and I didn't do some good things before and all that stuff. I'm not going to say I was, a terrible person. I wasn't by any stretch. But today I'm a lot more intentional. So going through that has really helped me focus and know that every day is a gift, even though some days still suck, right? Every day above ground is good, but I still deal with, challenges. There's a little bit of that. I tell people the purest form of grace I've ever seen is the fact I did nothing to deserve to live, nothing. And Abraham did nothing to deserve to die, yet I'm here, right? That's grace. Me receiving that is grace. So I do try to extend that kind of grace, and I am more graceful than I used to be as well in everyday situations because, you own a business. I owned a business for a long time, and, it can be a jungle out there. And I used to deal with things, a little tougher than I think I do today. But yeah, so that's kind of the shift. And when I saw this and what I do now is a vehicle to be able to help people, and some of the most important things that they can do, set themselves up financially and have hard conversations and have the the succession of when you're gone, making sure you're taking care of, the people behind you. I love it. I do wake up every day of work, and I do enjoy what I'm doing. Like any day, it's like sometimes it's the same thing over and over and monotonous, but I do know that I'm doing good service out there in the community. And that's a good feeling.
I felt like my work for years, Josh, has been my ministry. It's been my gift back. My mentor told me a couple of things. One thing he's always said is leave the world better than you found it. And so I've taken on these various topics and issues. I work at a business that's unlicensed and unregulated. So there's a lot of knuckleheads and there's a lot of unscrupulous and unethical behavior, conduct amongst the world. But in the meantime, I want to create safety and trust in that space. And for you to share your story, talk about your faith and hanging on there and know that, hey, man, this is unmerited. I get to do what I get to do this now going forward. I'm not obligated. I get to, and there's a gratitude and a humility, I think, that comes through with everything you've said today. I was listening to the astronauts that just came back from the moon or the trip around the moon. And the one guy said yesterday in his interview, he said, I'm not particularly religious or faith-driven person. When you're out there and you're looking at the vastness of the universe, it's messed up my point of view. His worldview, I think, is shifting right about now on a similar trajectory. At 40 years old, a healthy, vibrant man, father, young kid, successful business owner, all the things you are not expecting to hear what you heard that day.
No.
And faced with what you had to face.
No. And I would never wish what I went through upon anybody. I'm glad I went through the process personally. I am a better person. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I'm a better just human. One of my goals, I used to say it even before all this, but today is like intentionally, I want to be a blessing to everybody I'm in front of. Like that's my goal. Simple, but I literally try to intentionally, like I'm on this call. I want to be a blessing to you and your audience. When I was with one of my advisors earlier, like he needed some help kind of understanding how to structure things. I want to be intentional and be a blessing to everybody I'm in front of. And that's, it's my goal every day.
Well, I couldn't ask you to wrap it up any better than that. So I'm going to leave it right there. You guys, I just want to thank you, Josh, for being here and being so vulnerable and sharing. I hope this is the first of a number of conversations. Come back and do this with me again.
I appreciate you having me on.
Let's do some workshops.
Yeah.
Let's do some workshops and education for families so that we can help prepare them.
Yep. And I'd love to have you on my podcast here like we talked about. So we'll get that scheduled. That'll be a lot of fun.
That'd be great. You guys, I mentioned earlier options for senior living. I founded back in 2003. We're a no-cost to family service to help you navigate and figure out the right direction to go in a very complicated world that is senior living and senior healthcare. Our parents and our families are challenging and difficult, and sometimes you need that third person, as Josh referenced earlier, and we can be that objective third party to step in and help you navigate with your clients or your families. We're a family-owned business. It's my wife and I and our two daughters. We are just one of two companies in the nation certified by the Right Care Foundation for the kind of work we do and the methodology that we employ in the work we do with families. So really, really proud of that. I also want to mention, Josh, this stuff for your families and for everybody's listening. We're also the hosts of a group called the Aging Parent Tribe. It's a private Facebook group for families and caregivers to join and be in together. We have about 800 members now in that group. They come in and bring their stories, and the things they say is, oh, my dad just got diagnosed with this, or oh, my mom's in this skilled nursing facility. Does anybody have a good suggestion? And there you can bring your things to the table and get support and resources and help. You will not be bombed by a bunch of professionals trying to prey upon you. You're going to be met with a community of people that care and that will rise to the occasion and help support you in those moments. So Aging Parent Tribe is on Facebook. We invite you to come join us and be part of the conversation and be part of the community. Josh, thank you again for being here. You guys, Josh, tell everybody where they can find you, your website, and maybe your email address or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So arrivefinancialservices.com is our website, but really anywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Joshua C. Norris. You can look up Joshua C. Norris, connect with me there. LinkedIn's the same. But yeah, anything I can do to be a resource to you or any of the audience, connect with me. That's what it's all about. So yeah, man, I
Awesome.
really appreciate you having me on today.
This has been fun. Thanks again. All right, y'all, take care. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a great